When we talk about the greatest directors of all time, we're usually talking about auteurs, filmmakers with a recognizable style that often bends or breaks the rules. Meanwhile, directors with no visible style are left out of the conversation. But why? Ron Howard makes great movies. In 2002, he won Best Director, beating known auteurs like Ridley Scott, Robert Altman, and David Lynch. Countless video essays and entire books of analysis have been dedicated to those amazing directors. But Ron Howard doesn't tend to get the same appreciation.
Very good work.
Rob Reiner made all of these movies, absolute classics in their respective genres, but you won't find any of them on the AFI or BFI Best Films lists. Both Howard and Reiner make movies we love, but neither of them has a distinct directorial style. So what are we to make of this? Do we simply accept the assumption that visible style is inherently more valuable than invisible style? Shouldn't the definition of a great director be that they make great movies?
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
In this video, let's explore what invisible style actually is, and appreciate all that it does without us even noticing it. Perhaps there is room to respect these non-auteurs just as much as the established auteurs. Let's get one thing straight. Invisible style does not mean a lack of style. It simply means that the craft of filmmaking is meant to be invisible. Filmmakers like Ron Howard serve the story and the characters without imposing their personal touch. This doesn't mean they are better or worse than more flashy techniques. They just have a different goal. This invisible style isn't a new development. It's been around since the beginning. At the height of the Hollywood Golden Age in the 1930s and 40s, almost all American directors had an invisible style. They worked within a rigid studio system that gave them very little freedom, and the role of the director was largely seen as someone who shepherded a project along, rather than a singular creative voice. Film historian Thomas Schatz notes of the time period, ultimately, any individual style was no more than an inflection on an established studio style. For studio executives, films were products that needed to have tight quality control. The more immersive a film was, the better the product was considered. Filmmaking techniques that called attention to themselves, like jump cuts, were seen as mistakes to be avoided. And so a very specific way of making films was created. Schatz elaborates that the studio system resulted in a set of formalized creative practices and constraints, and thus a body of work with a uniform style, a standard way of telling stories, from camera work and cutting to plot structure and thematics. This system is long gone, but the legacy of its uniform style continues to loom large. Films look and feel a lot different today than they did a century ago, but the same considerations for the continuity style have simply evolved. Almost all narrative directors use at least some invisible techniques codified within the studio system. So let's look more closely at what the invisible style actually pertains to, starting with coverage. Invisible stylists will often use a master coverage approach for scenes. This means starting with a wide master shot that establishes the space, and then moves into medium shots or close-ups. Shot choice typically underscores the tone of a scene.
I'm special counsel for internal affairs, and I'm telling you, you could get in a lot of trouble.
Why, Lieutenant Commander Galloway, you're not suggesting that I back off a material witness.
If a conversation gets more intense, then the director may move into a tighter shot.
If you think you can't get him, yeah.
Invisible coverage means coverage that obeys continuity rules, like the 180-degree line, where the camera doesn't cross the plane of action.
I don't understand.
I love you.
Conversations are typically covered with shot reverse shots, allowing for the dialogue and performances to take the fore, and for flexibility in the editing room to choose reads and manipulate pacing.
Well, the Supreme Court disagreed with you, Ms. Shaw. They found that the statute did not violate the right of privacy. Now, why is that?
Because they're wrong.
The camera is typically kept at eye level, unless it needs to match an eye line. For example, If a character is looking down, the shot may be a low angle, and the eyeline match of what they're looking at will be a high angle. Invisible coverage doesn't need to be stationary, but a camera's movement is typically motivated by actors blocking. A camera moving on its own volition calls attention to itself. A camera moving with a character is simply following the action.
Just tell me what I did, that's all. Just tell me what I did that's so terrible.
You, it's not
Then
you.
what is it?
It's me. It's my fault.
Closely tied to these techniques is cinematography. A non-auteur's cinematography doesn't have to be bland and uninteresting. There are plenty of beautiful shots that come from directors with understated styles. Cinematography that doesn't draw attention to itself is often motivated and visually pleasing. This is particularly true of its lighting. Take the lighting in this scene from Philip Noyce's Clear and Present Danger. The lighting here is cold and colourless, motivated by the office setting, and yet the medium shots on both men are lit with three-point lighting, a strong key light, a soft fill, and a backlight separating them from the background. It's flattering lighting, but it doesn't distract from the conversation at hand.
You see everything in black and white.
No. Not black and white, Ritter. Right and wrong. You see?
But quote-unquote invisible lighting can serve other purposes too, like informing a scene's tone.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
In this scene from Roland Emmerich's The Patriot, the lighting is both flattering and motivated. The sunlight is harsh, but fill lights mitigate the shadows. The setting sun, however, elevates the drama of the sequence, emphasizing the emotion Benjamin feels saying goodbye to his family.
Goodbye, Susan. Goodbye. Just one word, that's all I want.
Equipment choices too can help make cinematography more invisible. Often, this means choosing lenses that avoid distortion, typically between 35 and 50 millimeters, as well as using cameras that boast a high enough resolution that will immerse the audience. The invisible style is completed in the editing room. Invisible editing has its own term: continuity editing. Continuity editing is the dominant form of cutting in narrative filmmaking, especially Hollywood, and it refers to cutting a film in a way that doesn't call attention to itself. There are a few time-tested ways an editor can pull this off, like cutting on action and eyeline matching, or cutting to where a subject is looking. But even if your average audience member may not notice it, continuity editing is filled with nuanced, creative decision-making.
Slippery little suckers.
Let's break down the editing decisions that go into this scene from Big, directed by Penny Marshall.
When you consider that GoBots, Transformers...
Even though Paul is talking, we cut between shots of Josh and the other employees who are watching him play with the toy. This puts the emphasis of the scene on Josh, and also illustrates that Paul is boring the group.
And that is 1/5 of the total revenue from all of last year.
The scene then turns into a shot-reverse shot between Paul and Josh. First, Josh is covered in a wide, so that we can see how much he and his outfit stand out from the group.
Any questions?
When we cut into closer coverage, the pacing is very deliberate.
Yes? Yes?
I don't get it.
After Josh's first line, there is a long silence. This meeting is taking a turn.
What exactly don't you get?
It turns from a building into a robot, right?
Precisely.
There are more pauses in their initial back and forth,
Well, what's fun about that?
interspersed with reaction shots to emphasize that Josh is doing something unheard of.
Well, couldn't it be like a robot that turns into something like a bug or something?
A bug.
Once Josh unveils his idea, the dialogue moves faster, and the chattering tells us that his thinking has invigorated the group.
A prehistoric transformer?
Interesting.
Gentlemen,
So the robot turns into a bug.
gentlemen, listen.
The editing in this scene isn't showy, but it effectively lands an important story beat.
This is a great idea. Someone's a water bug?
Well done, Josh. Well done.
Red ants.
Sound design can take a similar approach. typically motivated by what is happening in a scene, but subtly manipulated to change how we perceive it.
What was that, Ray? Whatever it is, it ain't blocking. Give me a break.
In this scene from Remember the Titans, the sound is all rooted in what we are seeing, but the noise of the hits are especially loud, elevating the tension of the violence between the players. In this exchange from John Turteltaub's While You're Sleeping, the sound mix doesn't seem especially notable.
The leaning thing.
The leaning thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But listen carefully, and you'll notice the ambient chatter in the background gets quieter the closer the characters get to one another.
What do you mean by the leaning? Because he gave me flowers?
And then you leaned.
And then I leaned.
Yeah. Leaning involves wanting and accepting. Leaning.
And it turns back up when they're interrupted.
Hey, Luce. Is this guy bothering you?
It's a minor detail, but it subconsciously emphasizes the intimacy of the moment. It should be remembered that this auteur versus non-auteur debate was created by passionate critics who had personal opinions about what a director should or shouldn't be. Just because you don't see a filmmaker's style doesn't mean it's not there. The Invisible style requires as much skill and attention to detail as more flashy filmmaking. After all, a lack of style isn't a lack of craft. Get your own great story started with Studio Binder's pre-production software, which includes storyboards, shot lists, call sheets, and more. Until next time, remember, sometimes the smartest thing a filmmaker can do is get out of the way of a great story.
You rule, man. There's my feedback. You rule.
I'll take that all day long.
I'll give it all day. Yeah, great. Awesome. There you go.